Well, I've been a bookworm and a lover of libraries all my life, and I knew that Arthur Vanderbilt's entire career, we're talking hundreds of boxes from his law practice, his political career, aspects of the court, were on file with the library at Wesleyan University. And I had been there, and I had done some research and looked at some letters. And as part of that research, I learned about a book written by one of his proteges. Book never did get published by a serious publisher. It was self-published, and maybe it sold 100 copies. But I learned about the book. I tracked the book down, and I read the book. And as I'm reading the book, he discusses the hatred that Vanderbilt had for Frank Hague, and he proceeds to report on an interview that he had done with Judge Alfred Clapp, one of the more respected judges in the 20th century New Jersey, I'd say in the second half of the century. Everybody knows Judge Clapp, and Judge Clapp is quoted by this author, Gerhardt, as saying Vanderbilt hated Hague so much that he found an Ivy League professor to write a book on Hague's career. And I said, my God, I've read that book every bit of 20 years ago. Can it be that Vanderbilt had a hand in the writing of the book, The Boss, The Hague Machine in Action? Well, as a result of some determined sleuthing and digging and trips back to Wesleyan, I learned that there was Box 96. And in Box 96, which is the title of one of the chapters, what you see is Arthur Vanderbilt's fingerprints all over the research and the writing of the book, and you see his sleeves rolled up with ink up to his elbows in the writing of the book. And that simply blew my mind. That he was able to keep it a secret for as long, he kept it a secret till he died, and he kept it a secret from Frank Hague, because had Hague known about it, it would have been plenty to pay in terms of giving him aggravation over it. But as you go through Box 96 and you look at the correspondence between the author, and I say author in quotes because he had a co-author that nobody knew about. The author of the book, David Dayton McKean, this professor who formerly had been at Princeton, had been in the state legislature, understood Frank Hague, had seen Frank Hague up close, and knew just what a powerful force Frank Hague was in Jersey politics and what a corrupt force he was. He was now up in Dartmouth, and the file begins with an exchange of correspondence with McKean reporting on, it's summer break, I'm not making any money, and I need money to get me started on this project if you want me to do it. Now, we don't know how much money changed hands, but we do know that Frank Hague sent him a check. We do know that Arthur Vanderbilt sent him a check, and he began the research. And we do know after that there were many exchanges of correspondence between the two of them, delivery of entire chapters that Vanderbilt would mark up and send back, whole paragraphs that he would rewrite. Weekends, when McKean would come down from New Hampshire and spend the weekend with the Vanderbilt family in Short Hills, New Jersey, and go over working on the book. Vanderbilt was so involved in the book that he really does warrant being termed a co-author. One of the interesting things, and it's almost funny, it sort of reads like a farce or it reads like a tragedy, depending upon how you want to read it. There's this memo from one of Arthur Vanderbilt's followers, a lawyer from Newark, a gentleman by the name of Dominic Cavecchia, who was a lawyer from Newark. He was part of Vanderbilt's organization. And it looks like, from the correspondence and Mr. Cavecchia's memo, it looks like Vanderbilt was getting cold feet as the book was about to be published. And despite the fact that Vanderbilt had bought 500 advance copies, he wanted his name removed from everything, and he wanted Cavecchia's name substituted. Well, the memo from Kvecki to Vanderbilt reporting on his trip to Boston, the publisher was Houghton Mifflin, which at the time was a very respected publisher. His memo to Vanderbilt makes it clear that he had no success. He ran into a stone wall. And the way he reports on his interactions with the people at Houghton Mifflin, again, you can read it as a comedy, or you can read it as a farce, or you can read it as a tragedy, but it was pure craziness in terms of the lengths that he went to try to get Vanderbilt pulled out of any connection with the book, and his efforts were unsuccessful. But what wasn't unsuccessful was that after the book was published, Vanderbilt had bought 500 copies. Vanderbilt had a public relations person that he was friendly with in Newark. They had the book distributed to people all across the nation, because you have to remember, Frank Hague wasn't just the boss of New Jersey and Hudson County politics. He was vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and he was a force at Democratic conventions when conventions really were something where a candidate would get chosen. And so what Vanderbilt wanted was for the book to be distributed nationally and reviewed nationally, so that Democrats across the nation would get a feel for just how corrupt this guy Frank Hague was when he would interact with them as a member of the Democratic National Committee, as vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee. And so Vanderbilt knew what he was doing. He was driving a dagger right into the career of Frank Hague, and was quite successful at it. The book did hurt Hague. There were other things that hurt Hague as well in terms of his whole power structure that led to his eventual resignation as mayor. But he died healthy, died to be an old man, close to 80, died very wealthy, and the whole story was something that he went to his grave, the whole story of the book, The Boss, the Hague Machine in Action. He never knew the true story. And you almost wish you could bring Frank Hague back and let him see Box 96. He'd probably have smoke coming out of his ears to think that Vanderbilt got away with that, and he didn't know it. And Vanderbilt, wherever he is probably smiling, knowing that he got away with it. And we went to his grave without nothing but a handful of people learning about it. He could trust Alfred Clapp, and he could trust David Dayton McKean, because David McKean wanted to be known as the author. So he wasn't going to share the credit with anybody. I found Box 96, and I spent days combing through the box up in Wesleyan's library. I found Box 96 informative, entertaining, and it's sometimes sobering, to show it really shows you the depth of Arthur Vanderbilt's hatred for Frank Hague. He was obsessed with him. That's unfortunate. That's a flaw. You should never become obsessed with somebody else, because hatred is such a negative energy.